This thing is crazy.
Good afternoon, party people. My name's Clay with the Clayway here in Grand Rapids, Muskegon, Western Michigan. I work on a crap ton of these vehicles. Do me a solid favor. Do not piss on my algorithm. When you find the spot that you're looking for, turn the volume down, restart the video, and let the sucker play. Hit the thumbs up, all that crap, and you'll really help my channel out, and I'll be able to help more people like you. And if you're not the one who needs help, at least I'll be able to help other people. Consider donating, super chatting, whatever. I do this stuff for your health, not necessarily mine, although it does make me feel good. I usually do make very comprehensive nut and bolt videos. I don't normally make them this long. I just felt like there was no other videos out there and you wanted to know things that other videos won't show you. So I tell you it all and I try not to waste your time. Okay, so we need to do intakes on this ML320. This is very similar to doing the intakes on a Mercedes Sprinter 3.0 CRD diesel. And it's also the same on Mercedes GL with the 3.0 CRD diesel. One of the things that's a definite must do for these intakes on here is we need to remove the wiper assembly right here and everything over the top of the turbo. It's going to make it very difficult to get the turbo out if I don't do this. First thing that we want to do is take a picture of the location of these wipers. I don't know if that helps, but that's what I do, and I put them back on exactly the same way they are. So still shot right here, good for you. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take a 16 millimeter and remove these 3 nuts right here. Now, remove this strip right here. I take my nut and I put it back on here 2 or 3 threads. I take a pry bar and I put it in there and I'll put a little bit of pressure on it. If you do not have a wiper arm remover like I do, you can take a pry bar, put it up underneath there with a little bit of pressure and tap on that a bit and possibly pop that up. But I do find it easier to use a wiper remover. I will use a battery terminal remover / windshield wiper remover to pull it off the rest of the way. Make sure your remover is set on the arm square as possible. Now that's going to bottom out and not release the wiper. But we can release it by releasing the tool, then we should be able to pull it up the rest of the way. With the tool off and the nut loose, you should be able to just move that to the 12 o'clock position. Raise the wiper blade up. Now the removal of that wiper blade is really simple. Make sure it doesn't get kittywampus. Perform the same procedure on this one and this one. I did have a hard time breaking this one off, which I don't assume you will, but I did spray it down with some penetrant, and that did help break it free. Now with them off of there, we pull this out of the trim, and just keep in mind for reassembly that it's going to go inside that trim first, so it makes a gasket there. And we just keep moving that upwards until it's free. We're going to have a piece of weather strip that's going to be hung on the other side. Looks like somebody already broke this one, I'm guessing. Something's broken in there. I know that's not right. It's supposed to have this piece of weather strip that connects into this piece of weather strip up underneath here like this. Removed. We should be able to get this out of underneath here by lifting it off. So now we have our wiper transmission. We're going to reach up underneath it, and there's a little clip we got to push. If it doesn't come off real easy, push the rocker down, push it forward into there, and sharply pull it back as you have the rocker held down. Now we're going to remove that bolt, and that bolt. We're going to remove this 10 millimeter bolt. We've got these 3 removed here, and we should be able to move this thing up and out of our way. Okay, so now we're going to remove the 10 millimeter bolts, and yes, there are 2 tucked up underneath here that we will need to remove. And we're going to remove this whole shield right here. At least that's the intention. I don't remember exactly how this comes off, but I got a good idea. So I also removed the 2 10 millimeters right here, which makes this loose and kind of flexible here. We can remove this heat shield right here. Yes, this needs to go back inside here. Very important. With this screw removed here, that allows us to pull up on this right here. And then if we look down here, we're going to find some 10 millimeter bolts here and over on the opposite side there. That bolt only needs to be loosened because you can remove it the rest of the way like this. Need to figure out what's securing that down there. Nothing is securing that down there. It just needs to be able to get out below them clamps. Now we're ready for the real work to begin. So we're gonna do a nut and bolt intake removal. Oh, this is an ML320, but this procedure is also the same for the ML350 and the GL450 and 350 if they make one of those. So we're gonna start with getting 8 millimeters, and we're gonna start removing. We can just simply start removing these bolts right here because these are the ones. Now I'm going to point out during this video what we need to pay attention for. This is going to be similar to the actual Mercedes Sprinter 3.0 in a lot of ways, as well as the Jeep Grand Cherokee. These are almost identical to the Jeep Grand Cherokee. If you didn't know, yeah, the Jeep Grand Cherokee had an OM642 in it. There's definitely a lot of work involved in this, and you're going to need an accoutrement of different sockets and stuff, but one of the most important sockets that I recommend for having this job, and no, they didn't pay me for this, is these gear wrench bit biters right here, and they will grab onto any stripped heads, which you're going to see me do during this video. Pliers, torque wrenches, you definitely want to torque these down. I'll put that torque values and how you torque things down at the end of the video. Long wrenches as well, gear wrenches, they'll be helpful. It's not a must-have, but definitely going to need good ratchets, extensions, different extensions, and an 8 and 10 millimeter long and shallow, but the appropriate tool is the E10 and the E12. You'll see in the video all the things that I use. Oh, and I almost forgot. Just in case things get too bad for you, have a lighter with you because you never know when you need to set something on fire. I'm just kidding. Keep in mind that if anyone else can do it, you can do it too. Consider subscribing, clicking the notification, sharing my videos. Give me them sweet old thumbs up. Back down here, there is a clamp that holds the exhaust together. That's really nice. Okay, so I don't know what we're gonna do while we do all this. Maybe I'll tell you folks some stories. Hopefully you can kind of follow along. When I'm doing this right now, I'm going to show you my tips that I've learned over doing dozens of these engines. The things that you'll need to know that they're going to create complications for you. There's a lot of fine molecule things, and I believe that if anybody else can do it, you can do it too. But one thing about taking out a job like this that you need to think about is that it's not always going to go as well as you want it to. Now, these are map sensors right here that I'm unplugging. And this connector should have 2 of these on each side, and it does. Stupid ass thing. What we could do is we could get a pick tool and stick it up underneath there. Take that off. That is a terrible looking connector, and that thing's probably just about done. These are air filters right on each side of here. Most of the stuff that I'm going to do is not going to be super intuitive right now. It's going to be getting down there. You're always going to, most of the time, you're going to find oil. You want to stick your finger inside the turbo and try to move it like this. You're definitely, generally not ever going to move it like this, but if you do, it's junk. If it moves in and out, it's close to junk. Not quite, but close there. These right here, we're going to end up cutting off of here. You're supposed to have a hose that runs from up here to the other side. And if you do have a hose right here, it's better to go over here and take the bolt out and take the whole hose out at once, because you'll usually end up breaking this off of here. When you're doing this job, the most important tool that you're going to want to use is a pneumatic ratchet or wrench. You're going to have to pardon me if I say some goofy stuff, because I'll do that all the time. Now, one of the things that you're going to also want to know about is a lot of these bolts are proprietary to the hole that they go in. If you take them out and they have a special link, do not put them in there. Now, like these bolts right here are 20 millimeters, 6 by 1.25. These are not necessarily important. Most of the lengths of the bolts are going to be 25 millimeters or 20 millimeters, and they're mostly going to be 6 millimeters. However, it's very easy to confuse the 6 millimeters and the, supposed to be little clamps right there. I don't quite understand why they're missing. This guy's got my resistor trick inside here because his intakes are locked up, and I'm pretty sure his oil cooler's not working. Now, if you ever go on a bolt and it seems too tight and it stops your pneumatic wrench, start spinning it, and then that will unlock the bolt. Try not to strip it off. If you do strip off these bolts, what's going to come in super handy are these bit biters. No, they didn't pay me for that, but these things work so freaking good that I deserve to give them a free plug. They should pay me. If you guys want to email them, let them know. That would be terrific as well. You don't really have to drain the coolant out of this thing. It's not really gonna run into it. There's some more of them 20 millimeter, or yeah, 20 or 25. I don't remember off the top of my head. I usually measure them, but if we look right here, that's a 16 millimeter bolt. See, it's only a tiny bit shorter, but if you put the wrong one in there, you're gonna blow out the side of that. So we need to make sure that we keep these in a separate position. And what I normally do is I will put them back there, you know, when they're not, when I'm worried about something breaking, I will put it back right where it came out of. And these other ones I don't have to worry about because they're just fasteners holding little things down. But these ones would cause us some serious trouble. There's bolts missing all over this thing. This one that comes out of the turbo, possibly even 12 millimeters long. See the normal length versus that thing? Do not put the wrong bolt in there. You should be able to remove this bracket. There was supposed to be a bolt down here, but it wasn't there. So now I'm going to go ahead and put this little bolt right back inside here. Now this probably looks like a really daunting task to most of you folks, but I'm here to tell you, if anyone else can do it, you can do it too. I promise you. That is straight and as honest as it can possibly be. Now, this is one of those situations, normally I'll say, hey, you can't break what's already broken, but you can certainly break some shit doing this work right here. So, don't do that. I didn't feel as if you needed to see all this, but I'm reinstalling the bolts that I took out that were different lengths, so I don't get them confused. Now, this that I'm using is a slide-through 10 millimeter on this thing, but you could probably just grab this with some vice grips and loosen it up, or I don't think a deep well socket's going to fit on there, but you don't have these slide-through things. They're not ultra. There isn't a lot of times that you need them, but when you need them, they come in handy. Now I quite simply grab these with some wire cutters, twist them, and they break right off. Now, there's actually hose pliers that would probably work better for these, but I don't know where the hell they're at. Now we just got to push that clip down right there, be able to move that, set that up. It's going to leak out diesel. We're going to loosen these fuel injector lines, and there'll be a reason that we're doing this, obviously. That one was loose. This is crazy. There's a bolt missing over here, and that's one of the examples that I want to give you guys about these vehicles. You need to put every single thing back in that comes out of it. If you don't, you're going to have nothing but trouble. I'm telling you right now. Hey man, I'm the one for cutting corners, and I will cut all the corners as possible. As many as possible, without a doubt, not an issue at all for me. But you don't want to break off these connectors. Like, this connector is broken. This is not good for these Mercedes. These Mercedes absolutely love throwing codes. And you will get codes for the stupidest things. They will go into limp mode. Now, I don't know if you guys can see the difference. This is 7mm. This is 6mm. See the diameter difference? It's very easy to get grabbing these bolts and get these confused. And that 7mm missing off of there, you know, that's probably not the end of the world. When I get done and I go to put it back together, I'm going to have to replace that bolt. Or, you know, that's my intention anyways. Follow through is not always the best with me, especially when it's something that I know that it can really live without. I will probably do that, but I think I actually have 7mm bolts. If I don't, I won't. Now notice that I'm pulling these back, and the reason that I'm pulling these back is what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the back of this right here, and I'm going to try to pull it out of the holder. Once I remove this bracket that's right here, that's what I forgot. You know, there was a reason. Once again, these bolts right here are loose. This is crazy. And they are 7mm. Everything that goes into the intake is 7mm, I believe 1.0. When it goes into the intake and it affixes something that's heavy, it's a big bolt. Bigger, because they have 8mm bolts in here too, which is, you know, I mean, they're easy to tell the difference between the 8mm and the whatevers. Now, that just simply pulls out of there, pulls out of there, pulls out of there, and bam-ola, you got that out of there. Now, what I like to do is I like to have this wiring harness free for when I go to pull the intakes out. So we're going to have to take this air filter off here, and it's going to take me a couple minutes to remember how the hell it comes off, because I don't know. Now we're going to take this line out of here, and I like to set this stuff off to the side the same way I pulled it off. You can do whatever you want, but it makes for less thinking when you have to go put it back together. That's why I do it that way. It's right in the way of here, but I want to, before I move to the turbo pipe, I want to get as much stuff off of this area so I don't have to move the camera around all over the place. Oh, drop that down there. Well, we might as well go ahead and remove these turbo pedestal bolts since we're up here. Now, everywhere is going to tell you that these are T45s, which technically they are. I use a T47 and a hammer to tap them into place. I've never stripped one out that way. That's why I do it. Now, you're going to notice a lot of things when I'm working on stuff that my head's not in the way because I don't have to see it. I've learned, one, I'm mostly blind, so I don't see for crap. I don't have to look down at the bolts. I just take my fingers and I feel it. Now, one thing that differs from this ML and the Sprinter is there's a lot more room to swing that hammer. But that hammer doesn't have to be swung all that great. But what is nice is you shock the bolts, remember, and then they just come loose. Which I doubt that the bolts were that loose. You know, they just, for whatever reason. Now, these are the only two bolts that are identical to these. But I will tell you that when you order like one of my new kits, or if you're having me do your intakes, if you don't know about that, check out my Sprinter playlist. They come with bolts, but they look identical to the ones that are in the exhaust. They're like these bright chrome one, or bright copper looking ones. I don't know what the hell they're made of, but they are freaking hard bolts. One time I had somebody strip these bolts out, this particular bolt that I'm taking out right now, and it took me 6 hours to drill through that thing. Now, I was probably working with junk drill bits and all sorts of crazy stuff. Got that out of there. Don't lose these bolts. You can reuse them, even though I know they're stretched to yield. I wonder if the camera caught that fart that I just made. You see, working on automobiles isn't necessarily knowing how to work on that particular automobile. It's more of a set of skills that you learn over time, either from guys like me. You know, guys like me taught me. I don't know this stuff, and I've obviously figured quite a bit of it out as well. I mean, because nobody's going to be willing to teach you anything. Most people don't want to teach you anything now. They want you to just learn it yourself, and you do have to get out there and do that stuff. You're never going to make it anywhere in the world by not working hard. I mean, you can get lucky and become a big YouTube influencer, and obviously I've been doing this for like 6 years, and yeah, YouTube don't really pay all that much. I went down to Virginia and picked this guy's vehicle up for him. He paid me for it. Paid me pretty good to go down there and get it. He was real reasonable, real fair guy. This is his baby. He wants it, you know, to be taken care of, and I don't know that I'm the best. There would be a couple people out there in the country that would disagree with me, but you know, I am on YouTube, so I suppose I'm somewhat of a celebrity of sorts, even though I don't necessarily feel that way. But I do find it kind of interesting when I drive around in my big van and I drive all over the countryside and stuff like that. People treat me differently, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, I like it. Nothing wrong with it. On the side of here, there is 2 little tabs, or they're supposed to be. I don't know. They may be broken off. Somebody's been working on this thing that don't quite understand, but this one's not broken, so we're good there. Now, behind here, we're going to have 3 turbo bolts. I'm going to try to take them because I'm going to have to move the camera to do that, so I'm going to do that later. We've got a bracket back here. I'm pretty sure you guys can see because I set up the camera to be able to do that. So we're going to take this bolt out of this bracket, and then we're going to take the hammer and we're going to hit this thing. It's pretty well, it fits on here pretty darn well, I'll tell you. Come on. Just take an extension, kind of clips together like that. If I have to, I'll grab a longer screwdriver. This is just what was near. Yeah, my screwdriver. Oh, it did clip. Now, it's going to be stuck inside there a little bit, so you can take this screwdriver, just give it a couple wiggles, maybe put it up against the back of here, and kind of pry it so you can get it off, get it loose like that. Trust me, it doesn't go on that easy either. I've had to put longer ones in there to get them to start, and then I put the original bolt back in there because it clamps it together pretty good. Do want to remove this coolant hose out of the way, but I've got an oil leak, and I want to make sure that it's the freaking oil cooler down there leaking, so I don't want a bunch of coolant all over the place. Normally, I won't do what I'm about to do, but I'm going to drain the radiator because I want this upper hose to not have coolant in it. I don't have to drain the radiator, you know, all the way empty, but I'm going to drain it quite a bit so I don't have coolant go down inside there, so I can just make sure that it's actually oil that's down in the bottom of this thing. It looks like oil to me. It's really oily down there. Okay, here's something that I highly recommend, and you're going to think that you don't have to do it. We're going to take this little clip out of here, and we're going to pull this line out of here. The reason that we're going to do that is because when you're messing around with this thing, you will break this nipple off. I'm telling you, do not lose this clip and do not break this nipple off, because this is connected to your return lines on your injectors, and it's not fun to replace. It's hard to find, and most of the time you have to buy the whole line kit to get it. Hiding up here underneath this coolant hose is a U-shaped bracket and a T15 that we need to remove. Now, we've got to look down here on this feed hose to the turbo. We've got a couple bolts. One's underneath this mess of rubber, whatever the hell that is. That's an 8mm. You go in there just like this, and you'll be able to get that out. There's another one right here. And I believe that's the only two. But there might be a third one, so stay tuned. That's long. It's going to be hard to not remember where that goes. The difference that I've noticed between this and the Jeep Grand Cherokee is this is a lot easier to get on. The other Jeep Grand Cherokee goes straight into the flat part of the block. And it's kind of a pain in the ass to get in between the radiator and the engine. Oh, yeah, baby. Wow. Look at all that oil. That's crazy. I might have to take this water pump off. The customer said that he replaced the water pump on here, and that's when it started leaking oil. But he said it doesn't really leak that much oil. So, and we only have a couple drops underneath it. All right, so now we have 3 bolts right here. I think the third one is, well, maybe that's the third one. God, there's even oil up here. This is so insane. Now, most of the time I can do all of this stuff by memory, and these bolts aren't necessarily proprietary to the hole. They're just normal bolts. And these two that you're going to see here just really just go in the, in the spaces. But I keep a set of intakes laying around. Now, you might want to make a cardboard cutout or something like that of these and keep these bolts in there, because the lengths of the bolts, I can't stress this enough, are different. And they need to go back exactly where they came from. So I throw them in intakes. That makes it easy for me. Now, there's nothing securing the other side. It's got an O-ring that it fits in right here. So now we can start removing the wiring, get this stuff out of our way, and start removing the turbo back here. So we're going to move to the turbo portion of this video. How to remove a turbo off of an ML 320 or 350 with the OM642 3.0 diesel. So back here on the back of the turbo, we have 3 bolts. This one, and this one. And that's going to allow us, once we remove all 3 bolts, there's one underneath here, and you're going to feel a dividend in the exhaust where it goes on. So when you find this dividend, your bolt goes straight down in there. Yeah. This is the sucky part about Sprinters. On the early ones, they don't have that. All right, now here's where we got to be serious about taking out bolts. We do not want to break any of these. The best way to do this is take these out pneumatically. Loosen them up with your wrench or your ratchet, whatever you're using. These are E12 bolts right here. You can use a 10 millimeter, an E12, or the bit biter. Now, these things are going to be really tight, so you're going to want something long with some leverage, but one of the good things is we can actually get straight on these, and in the Sprinter vans, you're like at an angle like this, and it allows your head to twist on the back side of the ratchet, so generally end up stripping them off, but I don't think we're going to have that problem on these 3 right here. I would show you, but my head's going to be right in the way, and you'll see my bald spot. The setup that I use is a 3-inch extension with a 1-inch extension. And this, it allows me to get it back there and then still have enough room to swing my ratchet to where it doesn't hit this pipe right here and doesn't hit the wall too much, and I can actually get some leverage on it to break it free. So that's what it should look like. It should be in your dividend, and we've got barely enough room to put the ratchet in there. One of the nice things about the ML, God, I love that. Now I don't have to fight to work around that exhaust, unlike the Sprinter. Now that allows us to get at these bolts. I want to provide you extreme caution. These bolts are shorter than the exhaust bolts, and they look identical. The reason that they're shorter is because they will bottom down inside your turbo. So do not use exhaust bolts. Keep these 3 bolts separate from them. If you're getting a new kit from me, they'll come in there. These will hang on the turbo, and in my kit, you'll actually have little plastic pushies that go in there. Now down here, we have an extremely important pipe. And the reason that this pipe is so important is, if I remember correctly, it's been a while, but these bolts are 7mm. These bolts are 6mm. Do not get the two mixed up. And on some of the later model MLs, they have these, oh my God, they're the worst. They have this clamp that's like a band clamp, kind of like this one, except for it's much smaller. Oh, for Pete's sakes, I had to, oh, it was such a nightmare to get that off there. So now we're going to use 8mm to get these 4 bolts out of here, and we're going to take these off so we can get to our exhaust bolts. I knew it. If you want to avoid stripping these out, which I highly recommend you do, make sure you put that at the right trajectory. Take your fingers, run them down the end of the extension. Make sure that your extension is flat onto your bolt. Break them free, but do not remove them with the ratchet. And I'll explain to you why here in a second. The reason that you don't remove these with the ratchet is because the pneumatic will remove them consistently and evenly. And with the ratchet, you're constantly stopping. And when they stop, they break off down inside that hole. And that's not any fun, just so you know. I've spent hours trying to get them out and then watch a guy get them out in 5 seconds. Like literally 5 minutes. It's crazy. Now I'll take these bolts and I'll put them to the side, because if you look at them, they're not very long. That's because they go down inside cased threads, meaning that if you put one in there too long, it's just going to strip out the threads. But you put it in there too long, you could break the casing if it was aluminum. They were not 7mm as I suspected, but they were really long, so I'm going to leave them inside there. Now I want to show you something. If we go back down here, I watched this guy's YouTube video the other day, and he talked about removing these 2 bolts. This has got one broken off in it. I'm not sure why, but that's because they tried to remove this. How I remove these turbos, because them bolts break and they're super stuck. I don't remove these 3 bolts right here. I just take this whole thing off of here. In a Sprinter band, it's hard to get out, but these bolts are harder to get out than them. And right down there, if we take them 2 bolts out of there, it has the same effect as removing these. So while I have this turbo out, I'm going to replace this bolt, because I'm surprised that this turbo does not leak, because this is where a lot of our pressure is. So personally, I'm going to remove them 2 right there. Okay, one thing that I'm going to do is there's 3 bolts on each side of this flange. Both sides have 3 bolts. You can take it, if you're ever in a situation where you can't get penetrant onto these, just take an extension, spray the end and put it on the bolt, and then spray the end of the extension, and penetrant will drop right down on here. But what we want to do is the same thing with the hammer. We want to hammer on these just so it loosens them up and breaks them free. We want to get them loose with our ratchet and then use our pneumatic to pull them out so they don't break off in the exhaust manifold. If they break off in the exhaust manifold, you create a lot of extra work for yourself. Keeping in step with using pneumatics any opportunity I have. This guy, Justin, over at a Mercedes dealership in New Jersey, taught me this trick, and it has came in extremely helpful. So if you would, please go to Instagram, give him a shout out, say the Clayway sent you, and he will be forever grateful. He's a really, really good dude. I'm definitely going to run into some trouble because Hacky Von Hackenstein has apparently been here. I have only removed 2 of these bolts, but yet all 3 are gone. I guarantee you I got to remove this exhaust manifold.
This one's not coming off as easy as it should. But I don't want you to think just because I can't get it off, I don't know what I'm fucking doing, because I do.
Okay, now I've got an extension on there so I can get down on this bolt. And then I'm going to do the same to that bolt that's right down there. Now, I'm pretty sure that, well, actually, I'm very certain that we can remove this turbo. Try that. stay out of your way while I do this. Ugh. Comes out a lot easier than it does out of the sprinter bands. In the sprinter bands, you got limited space you could pull up, but you just twist it counterclockwise and move it as you take it out, and it comes out this exact same way and goes back in this exact same way too, and you don't break bolts off. Oh, they just didn't have the hole lined up. That's all it was. So that's good. Could have removed these two bolts, but most of the time them suckers are so tight. It's no fun. I can tell you, it's no fun. Now the next thing we're going to remove is these two E12s here, and there's supposed to be two E12s here, but I put my extension down on it accidentally. So we're going to remove that. I'm going to take a look and see if there's a bolt broken off in that hole. Well, maybe I'll be able to drill that out.
I'm honestly surprised that this gasket wasn't leaking.
It's starting to. This wasn't done all that long ago. Them are nice and shiny. That's really not something I want to see. But that is exactly why I say you use pneumatics to take them out. He would not have broken that bolt if he had done that. He was just using regular ratcheting wrenches. I think somebody was being really funny. I'm fairly certain that they put this inside there. I don't know why, but sometimes I write FU on the bottoms of intakes and stuff, so I can get that. That makes sense. What the hell is this gasket doing down there? That's for the turbo. It was laying down beside the pedestal. Now, it could have fallen off when I put it on there, but there's no press marks on it. This is a brand new gasket. And unless there's one on that turbo already or on that pedestal, which there's not one on the pedestal. However, there is one on the turbo, so that's good. Oh, he sent me an extra gasket. Thanks, man. I'm surprised by the hacky things that he did, that he actually put that gasket in there. I guess he would have had problems because it had definitely leaked. Now here on this side, we need to remove this air box right here because we need to get to the back of these coolant lines and release this crossover mount that's right here for the wiring harness. So in order to do that, I think having this air box out of the way is going to be the best for Clay. And you too. So we're going to take out this 8mm bolt here, and I would imagine there's some back here. I mean, I can see one bolt. I can't see them all. I remember this.
What is this, drive new intake?
No. Well, yeah, that's one thing I got to do. I also got to do this exhaust on it too, which is not going to be any fun because this exhaust is different than Sprinter exhaust. And on the Sprinter exhaust, we have a lot of room before that flange, but not on this one.
Well, it's the same as that Jeep, right?
It is same as the Jeep, but I never did one on a Jeep. I never deleted the exhaust on a Jeep before, so I don't quite know how it goes. Got a screw here. That is a long screw. I'm assuming that does something. And I know these ends open up. Just got to take the bolts out of them. That's all the rod I got. Whatever is laying there, it looked like there was like 2 pieces.
Well, I can try, but I don't think that's going to be enough.
Like something's broken right here. So right here, it just sticks in some rubber bungs down there below. So it's just a matter of moving it the correct way to get it out of there. Okay, so now we're gonna remove this bolt here, and there's another bracketing bolt right here. And then we're gonna start removing the cooling lines off of the EGR valve right here and the electrical connectors. On this electrical connector, we have to swing that up. Then we should be able to push that down and pull that off. We do not have to remove the EGR out of the housing to be able to remove it. And I also noticed that the bolt is missing out of here. So what I presume they did on the other side was they probably misplaced both of the bolts, and then they used one bolt out of this side to hold down the other side. Would be my guess. Gonna need a flathead screwdriver for here. After looking at this, we want to release this clamp right here, pull this off of here. Some coolant is going to come out, especially if you haven't trained it like me. And we want to remove this right here, which could be a clamp like this one here. We just want to slide it back. And what I'm thinking is we're going to release the intakes, and I'm hoping that this hose comes off of here. I had a screw down here that I removed, but this just goes to hard line, so it didn't really help that move too much, made it a little bit freer, but for the most part, I don't think that's gonna be that big an issue. Then we're gonna come over here and we're gonna start removing our intake bolts and start releasing everything. And we're gonna have a few things that are gonna be needing to be released down here. We can actually take our fingers and see if this moves, which this side generally does move. It's usually the driver's side that doesn't, but on these, good thing we don't need that anymore. I broke that sucker right off, didn't I? Usually on these, because the EGR comes in through this side's gonna be the side that plugs up the most, but it kind of seems like this side might be plugged up as well, because these arms are not really moving the way that they should down inside there. That's just my ball joint that's moving right there. I'm not certain, but I might not have broke that. That might have been part of his problem too. By the way, this hose that comes off this T just goes up underneath here and hooks it back into our intake, so we don't have to worry about removing that. Okay, so up underneath here, if I remember correctly, we're gonna have to remove these 4 bolts. You can feel them with your fingers. You can just use a regular 1/4-inch drive with an 8mm or E10 on there and remove these bolts. Now I'm gonna let you know, the last few times that I've done these, or just about every time, sometimes these bolts strip out when you go to reinstall them. You are going to reinstall all of this as one piece, but there's a reason that we don't take it out as one piece. I just can't remember what that is. So I'll remove these 4 bolts, and if you have to replace them, you use 1/4 20, and it has to be 1/4-inch 20. It can't be 1/4 12 or whatever the larger thread bolt is. The reason that is, and that'll work without tapping it or anything like that, but these ones I recommend tapping because they will. The reason that works is because that's 6.7 millimeters versus the 6mm 1 point here. Hopefully we don't have to worry about that, but I thought you should know. The only bolt that you're gonna have complications getting out is gonna be the one that's right in between here. And with that, I used a 1/4-inch drive with the deep well extension, and I just stuck it up underneath there, and I was able to loosen it. Then I take a quickie wrench, 8mm quickie wrench, put it back here, put it on the bolt, and then I'll loosen it out the rest of the way. Down the center of here, if I remember correctly, there's a bolt somewhere that holds the cooler to the intake. So we're gonna need to take that out, but I'll show it to you. Okay, so next we're gonna release this from here, and we're just gonna quite simply push these 2 tabs, and as we do that, we're gonna push down on the center of it. We removed this swirl flap actuator for quite a few reasons. If it's out of the way, it doesn't get broken. You do not want to break off these arms, and there's one on each end. We do this back one first because we have our swirl motor loose. we can put it into a position that's easy enough to get to. But when we go to reinstall this, we reinstall it as one whole unit. When we got that pushed down in there, we can quite simply take it out. You want to take these off, and if they break in half, that's okay. They're still very usable. Now we move the swirl motor into a position that allows us to get to this other block, and we release that one as well. This one's a little bit trickier because it's a narrower space, but just use long needle nose pliers and you'll be just fine. Now, I don't know why, but it seems a lot plainly more visible to be able to remove that bolt there. That is a very short bolt, probably so it doesn't run into the linkage. Can't say for certain. We're gonna go back here and we're gonna start removing all of these bolts that are holding down our intake. We're also going to disconnect our coolant temperature sensor that has a broken clip on it. You're supposed to have one that pushes it down. Boy. Hey, I've been there though. I didn't know how to do this stuff at first either. I just figured if anybody else could do it, I might as well do it myself too. This one's a little bit stripped out. This bracket's got to come off here. Now, I haven't drained the coolant. I know I said I was going to, but I didn't. Because I figured when I took out that other thing, it wasn't really going to matter. It doesn't still have coolant inside it anyways. The fuck are all of my extensions? Well, you get the idea. Now, we've got a stripped off head bolt there. It's probably my fault. No big deal. We'll fix that. But we've got this clip right here. And we want to remove that entirely and remove this out of here. The reason is we'll break that nipple off of there if we don't. All right, now right down here, there's a bolt hiding and we need to get that one out. That's our last bolt that goes inside this hole right here. But to give you an idea of what these intakes and where the bolts are, all the holes. Okay, if you're a dummy like me and you've stripped off a head of a bolt like I did, we're gonna take one of our bit biters here. We're gonna put it on our bolt right there. And I'm going to try to find a ratchet. I ain't never stripped one off like that. Now I've got myself into quite a predicament here. I've stripped off this head so bad that I couldn't get the 8mm on there to turn. I even tried another kind of bit biter. That didn't work. I obviously messed up when I rounded it off. Luckily, it's an easy workable position, so worst case scenario, I'm going to be able to grind it off. But what I've done was I've taken this 7mm bit biter after I stripped it off even more with an impact, and I've tapped that onto there, and the hopes is that if I'm gentle enough with it, that I can break it free like that. And I'm going to show you what I did with this thing and the reason that I had a headache. It was only about 5 minutes extra worth of work, but still, you know, if this was a specialty bolt, meaning that it was too long, I wouldn't be able to replace it with something that would work. So you want to be mindful of this, and it doesn't matter how long you've been working on cars. Complacency is the killer of all men and mankind. So you always try to not get too complacent and think that you know exactly what you're doing. But because these are 7 millimeters and they look like about 35 millimeters long, maybe 30 millimeters long, I really stripped that off. But it kind of shows you the power of these things. I had taken the 8 millimeter and I had taken my impact and rounded this off because the head was too big to fit in my 7 millimeter. And I knew if I tapped my 7 millimeter on there, that it was going to work really well. So that's how you overcome things. I didn't get all upset and start swearing and throwing bits and parts all over the place, because that's going to do you nothing, anybody, any good, because you're just going to eventually get so damn mad that you're not going to be able to work anymore. And that was our last bolt. So what we're going to do is right down about right here, we're going to take this and just kind of loosen it up. Now it's supposed to loosen up between here and here, and you want to be really careful what you do because you don't want to break things. I'm pretty good about knowing all sorts of tactics of not breaking anything, but you wait and watch. Because I've said that, I'm going to break even more than I already broke. But I'm really careful about what I'm doing here. I know it might not necessarily look like it, but I've been doing it for a while, so I know how to do things well. Now, we need to remove all of these injectors. Now, what you want to be really careful of, these are your glow plugs. And I remove these because oftentimes when you're pulling the intakes out, the caps might get broken. If you ever remove one of these caps and it looks all rusty, that means that was not working. Do not try to change these when the engine is cold like this. You want to change these when the engine is hot. Just a word from the wise. I've never actually broken any off, but I do try to avoid doing them. I still got that little bolt I got to take out from underneath there. So hopefully this all releases and we find the reason that there's oil all over the frickin' place. Now we're ready to drag this thing back. And how we get it dragged back is we grab the back here and we wiggle this, and this is going to come out all as one. I still got a little tiny bit of screw to screw out from right here, and I got that out. Now I want to take the intakes and I want to separate them into pieces, and I'll show you why here in a minute. Now, we put these back in together as one piece. It's going to make it simpler. Well, that's somewhat moving. See how much play there is in there, though? That's why it was going into limp mode. Now, I clean these, and I'll repair them. A lot of people all over the country, and a couple of people out of the United States have said that to me. I've seen a lot worse. Definitely seen a lot worse. Now we got to find out why this thing was leaking so much oil. So we'll figure that out. Whoever worked on this last was having a really bad day. This bolt was down there, and I didn't drop any bolts down there that I remember, but this clip was down there, and I know for certain that I took it out. Them clips are very hard to get, so that's kind of funny. Now I got to block this all off and give up on this for a day, but looks like our oil cooler was leaking down here. Either they didn't replace it the last time, which we'll know if we take the oil cooler out and there's red gaskets inside there, then they're original. If there's purple gaskets in there, they're aftermarket. And judging by all the rest of the work whoever did this, they didn't torque anything down. and over torqued some things, blah, blah, blah. They probably bollocksed it up. I'm guessing that was oil leaking out of there. Guess we won't know till we put it back together, but that's going to be a different day thing. I did not realize this video was going to turn out to be so freaking long. I've never done that before. But reinstallation video, you can check out my Jeep Grand Cherokee video. I'll put a link down in the description below. You can also check out my Sprinter playlist if you want to see some of the incredible things that I show you how to bypass and delete, like the swirl flaps. The only problem with the resistor trick is when you put the resistor in these, you will no longer go into regen mode. And that's the issue with the resistor trick. So I recommend you send your intakes to me. I'll delete them properly where they will still pass emissions and keep your vehicle going for hundreds of thousands of miles without having to spend a bunch of money. But it is safe to drive them with the resistor in there for a little bit. Check that out in my Sprinter playlist. If you dug what I did, my name's Clay with YouTube The Clay Way here in Grand Rapids, Muskegon, Michigan, Western Michigan. You can reach out to me on Facebook under Clay's AC and Auto Repair and send me a DM. Only car problems, not baby mama drama stuff. Gee! Or you can email me at thenewclayway@gmail.com. If you dug what I did too, please consider super chatting, super thanks, putting that down in there. It really, really helps my channel grow and helps it go. Consider subscribing, clicking the notifications, sharing my videos, and remembering, if anyone else can do it, you can do it too. Don't be the next to them. Be the absolute first to you. God bless, folks. Have the greatest of days.